Now, though, we come to a very special award. It's one presented only a few times over the 14-year history of our awards, and only then to very deserving recipients. It's the Outstanding Contribution to Sports Writing. Last year's winner was the broadcaster and writer Sir Michael Parkinson. This year, though, we focus on the sport of football and the career of one of the most celebrated and influential journalists of our time. A man who has already covered 13 World Cups in a 67-year career.
Well, the first time I came across Brian was I was a young reporter in South London, and I was at a match at Charlton, and I came home and my dad was a football writer, and I said, I said it was a good game, but there was a man in the press box who conducted a conversation across 5 rows, which lasted most of the first half. And my dad said, oh, that would have been Brian Glanville. So,
and I met him in Milano when I was working for Inter at a lunch that I shared with him and my wife, and he regaled us with many interesting stories about his life, not only in Italy, but of course his work in England up to that point.
Well, Brian's been a columnist for World Soccer for many, many years. He first wrote for the magazine in the early 60s and began a column in the 70s, and he's been a continued presence ever since. And it's a very important column for us because we cover the whole world of football, so many different aspects and so many different viewpoints.
Well, this is a man who started at the age of 17. He's about to hit 85 this year, so he's been on the go for nearly 70 years with no sign of retirement, no holidays, no diminishment so far as I can see in his energy. So he is quite inspirational, but also I think quite terrifying to most ordinary mortals.
I can remember being on a plane bringing the England team back home from, I think, Rome, and we were, the whole FA party, sitting on this plane waiting for Brian to arrive. He made this entry down the central aisle, and he was conducting an argument with the chief steward in Italian, and he had another argument with an FA man on the way down who was offended that Sunday. And he was just full of life and vigour. And as he got further down the plane, Jimmy Armfield, the old England player, was sitting there doing the Daily Telegraph crossword, which Jim did every morning. And Brian was in full flight and walking quite quickly, and Jim, speaking to himself, said, 10 letters meaning priestly. And Brian didn't even pause and walk past it, sacerdotal, and then carried on with the argument. I thought, God, he really is something, isn't he?
Brian Glanville, to me, he means the doyen of football writers, simple as that. He's someone I've admired since I first started reading newspapers. I remember reading his stuff as a teenager, reading the Sunday Times, actually getting quite angry about his take on Bobby Robson, but that's part of the joy of Brian. He had firm opinions. He's never been afraid to write them. I think he's always said that the greatest quality a journalist can have is their independence, and he certainly showed it.
Brian's never been one to be swayed by the latest phase or the latest fad. His ideas and opinions are always well thought out, well researched. He's not someone who will jump onto a bandwagon.
I mean, ultimately, he was the guy who first nailed Sepp Blatter. He saw through Michel Platini. He's already got the measure of Gianni Infantino, the new FIFA president.
He was never afraid, has never been afraid to back his judgment. He's an individual, this is Brian Glanville, and the game's been better for him.
So these awards tonight very much celebrate sports writing, and I think if there's one regret my father has, it's that in British culture, unlike American culture, I think he's always felt that there's a certain snobbery towards sports writing. In America, you can be a great sports writer, and I think that he would have loved it if British culture too had that same recognition that you could be a great literary writer, a great sports writer, without there being a distinction.
And his body of work is extraordinary, I think, for someone who's been a regular jobbing reporter as well. His literature's phenomenal. The plays that he's written and you always get the impression that he would have been happier as a playwright, as a novelist, rather than a football writer. But he's an extraordinary body of work. Brian
was a huge influence on me, and I think there's I'm probably going to steal this line from someone, I don't know who said it, but someone said that 90% of football writers are influenced by Brian Glanville, and the other 10% should be. And I don't think there's any greater tribute than that.
So Brian, I'm sorry I can't be with you tonight. As you know, I'm preparing for the Euros, but I wish you a wonderful evening and many, many congratulations on this very, very well-deserved award. I hope you have a great time.
To present the trophy and mark the moment, please welcome back on stage Bob Wilson.
Thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. This is a huge, huge privilege for me to be asked to present the Outstanding Contribution to Sports Writing Award. As you know, it goes to a man who's dedicated his entire writing life to sport and to football in particular. An individual who began that career in football journalism at the tender age of 17, had his first book published before he was 20. Here it is. It's an Arsenal book, by the way. Treasured now because it's been signed by Brian tonight for me. He had that published before he was 20, and who now in his mid-80s continues to educate and entertain his readers. It's pretty easy to find suitable words to describe him and his writing. Brilliant, honest, dedicated, passionate, riveting, an acerbic critic of the game of football, fearless, even ruthless. There are a few, I think, accurate descriptions. Ruthless, you may question my saying that, ruthless, but I think, for instance, his description of Sepp Blatter merits that. This is a quote from Brian about Sepp Blatter. Sepp Blatter, 50 ideas a day, 51 of them bad. Now that's reasonably ruthless. Anyway, the fact that he spent much of his early journalistic life in Italy added other dimensions as well, authoritative and accuracy. In all, almost 30 books and short stories published. 2 of them, by the way, very pertinent to my own position when I was a professional footballer. One of his books was entitled Goalkeepers Are Different, and then he followed that one up with The Real Truth, Goalkeepers Are Crazy. Which only Brian confirms exactly what Megs has known about me for 51 years of marriage now. So, as yet, I have not used the word iconic, but that too, I think, describes the writer we honour tonight. In fact, a very prominent American sports journalist, Paul Zimmerman, he's actually called Brian Glanville the greatest football writer of all time. And the timing, I think, ladies and gentlemen, of this award, following one of the greatest achievements ever in sporting history, not just in the football world, is perfect, as our recipient's middle name couldn't be more appropriate. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is my very great pleasure to present the Outstanding Achievement Award to Brian Lester Glanville.
It's marvellous, actually, and not only to receive this award, but receiving it at Lord's, because I have such an extraordinary memory of the first time I ever came here, this Sanctum Sanctorum, and it was way back in the summer of 1942, and I couldn't even tell you what I had for breakfast this morning. But the perverse tricks of memory. I have an absolutely pin-sharp memory of coming here, seeing what I saw, and seeing incidents in the game. My other memory, very sharp memory, is a very, very different one. And fast forward, please, 19 years or so, by which time I had the Sunday Times sports column, and I went to Lord's and I sat on the terrace, the balcony, next to the great Freddie Truman, who was, of course, a marvellous bowler and was extremely kind and extremely friendly. and very helpful, until suddenly a large, rather rubicund young man in an Oxford blazer turned up and said, "Hello, Freddie, I am afraid I've been sent down." And to which the reply was, "Ah, you silly and a Rabelaisian flow which I wouldn't even, with this mixed audience, begin to try to reproduce. And this was the other side of it. This was the other side of Lord's. Of course, it's fine to come back here again, but one has so many football memories and so many... is it an achievement to have been kicked by Ronnie Corbett on the Slough Greyhound Stadium? It did happen to me in a charity match. Jimmy Hill was the referee, but he didn't seem to see it. And at half-time, Jim Taylor, an ex-Fulham centre-half who was playing for us, we didn't need him, actually. It was a very easy game. We went to the dressing room, he said, "He kicked you, didn't he?" I said, "Well, possibly. Didn't really feel it." "You know what you want to say? You know what you want to say if he does that again? You want to say, 'I'm on this field the same as you are.'" I know I'm really meant to talk for only 3 minutes, but I'm a natural frustrated stand-up. And with which thought I think I'll close, and thank you.